levelized and the parliament is in session right now, you can also help us now get it to the reading so that the world can know actually Gen Z did their part. Kindly, that was my request, Senator Okia. Thank you.
Thank you, Harriet. What I would also request to you is just post it in the timeline for this chat, this space, so that many of us can just retweet. Eric, you had your hand up. Do you still have a question for Senator?
Yes, I have. Yes, thank you very much. I have three very brief questions for the Senator. And the first question is as regards the right of recall and Article 104 that he discussed earlier. And I was listening to him, and I actually agree with him on a number of things. But I would like to request the good Senator to speak about this right of recall in light of the decision in Petition 209 of 2016. That is the Katiba Institute versus the Attorney General and the Parliament. When you look at Article 104, it only empowers Parliament to legislate on the grounds and the procedure.
Is anyone speaking?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, Eric is speaking.
Legislate on the grounds and the procedure.
Is anyone speaking?
Yes, so I was requesting the Senator to speak to that right of recall in light of the decision in Petition 209 of 2016, Katiba Institute, and another was the Attorney General and the National Parliament.
And Eric,
Article 104 empowers...
Sorry to interrupt you. I've just seen you're a lawyer, so please help us unpack, because many of us here are not lawyers, so we in a way that tutaweza kuelewa hiyo swali.
Yes, ndio nakuja hapo. I want to state the citation of the decision and then just briefly explain what it said. So the citation is Katiba Institute versus the Attorney General and the National Parliament. And Article 104 inasema Parliament inaweza legislate on this right of recall with regard only to the grounds and the procedure. Ukiangalia 104.1 inasema a member of Parliament may be recalled anytime. But this judgment went ahead and said, it imposed those limitations. It has to be at least 2 years after the election, and not in the last 12 months of the election. And these are things that are debatable, because when you look at what the judge said, the judge was raising practical considerations in that petition. Alikuwa anasema elections are an expensive affair. And that was one of the reasons why they were saying that you need to give this person 2 years first to gauge. But the Constitution and Article 104.1 says anytime. That judgment also affirmed that imposition by Parliament. And you can only recall your member of Parliament once, or you can attempt that recall once. If it fails, you are stuck with that person. From where I see it, that sounds very unconstitutional, because it's like if you fail in a recall, now this guy has a carte blanche to do whatever he wants, afterwards, without any option of being recalled. So I'll just like for the Senator to briefly speak on that decision. I don't know if he was part of it, if he was part of the case. My second question to the good Senator is this conflict of interest bill. There is so much going on about it, and there is so much noise and heat from all corners. A lot of blame game, especially between the EACC and your colleague Senator Ledama Olekina. What happened? Was the bill mutilated at the Senate? And if that happened, who mutilated the bill? And my final question to Super Senator Okia Omtata, as one of the few leaders trusted by the people of my generation, you have had calls. People are asking for you to run for the highest office. If we demand that you do, are you going to run for president with our support? Thank you.
Yes, can I respond, or is there other questions?
No, tumemaliza wale walikuwa wameweka mkono juu mapema, so go ahead please.
Okay, I'll begin. The list, I've got 11 issues to respond to. So, first of all, I say that the issue of infrastructure Busia is in a mess, but we're trying to recall it back by, first of all, trying to reclaim the spaces. I'm litigating several various cases. There's even in the Malaba market, the public market in Malaba. Somebody has claimed it and even evicted the traders, and now a private person is charging money for it. I've done a lot of research. I've been able to establish that the market was indeed bought from the husband of this woman, and he was fully paid for the money by the county council. And she's coming back on a claim that has got no basis. She sort of went through a magistrate's court and got orders, but the record is there, it's very clear. There had even been a high court decision on it, and so you wonder how a magistrate's decision could override a decision of the Environment and Land Court. So I've put together a paper trail that I now want to use to reclaim the market in Malaba and restore the traders there. And the grabbing of land in Busia, and even there's no, first of all, Busia County does not have what we would call an inventory of its assets. So it doesn't know what it owns. Even the other time, just next to my home, I was shocked when somebody who had bought some land there, the man who used to work there, he's from Kisumu. He called me and said, I'm selling 8 acres of land. Would you be interested or get me a buyer? I asked him, where is the land? He said the land, the 8 acres is what remained from the 40 acres I sold to the county in 1976. And I said, in my village, is there land that belongs to the county of Busia? He said yes, and this is the title deed number because I even processed the title deed. I went to the registry of lands to check, and I was shocked to find the title deed is there for 41 acres of land that was just about a kilometer away from my home that belongs to the county government of Busia. But if somebody else is using it for farming sugarcane, just say, the only lucky thing that the local people in Busia don't know how to steal land. So the documents had not been interfered with, but it had been occupied by somebody else. I went and gave the documents to the governor. He's taken action, and they've fenced off the land. I've evicted whoever was occupying it. So there's a lot of confusion in that county. So if a land that belongs to the county, 40 acres, not 10 acres or 1 acre or whatever, is just a kilometer from my home. I'm the senator and I don't know. What are we dealing with? The mess in Busia is too big. So away from that, we need to recover these lands. I'm litigating the airstrip. That's 30 acres in the heart of Busia, grabbed by people. And that grabbing was even validated by Parliament. I've had to go and look for the history of this land from 1952, looking at the old people used to keep documents. They never had tweets. So they used to write down in black books. I've been able to reconstruct the history of the airstrip, which has been in operation from 1952, being grabbed in 1963, in 1986. That's when the title deeds were issued to private people. We have been caught. We have had injunctory orders. Busia had 3 airstrips during the colonial time. Up to 1977, Busia had 3 airstrips. Today we have got 0. We don't have an airstrip. So that's the mess that is in Busia, and it really needs a systemic engagement. And that's why when you ask for documents and you are denied, then there's something is being hidden. Can you imagine a senator being stoned because he wants to look at the government, the documents of the government, the county government? Can you imagine I have to go to court to demand that the governor gives me his expenditure record so I can see whether the budget has been implemented according to what is on paper? These are the kind of things we have, the kind of problems we have in Busia. And it's a complete mess. But I think the first thing for me as a senator for Busia is not to have a knee-jerk reaction to this, is to investigate and establish, go back to the ground and see what it is. When I was doing my research for the case on the airstrip, the maps in Kakamega do not show an airstrip in Busia town. I had to go to Survey of Kenya to get the original maps to be able to demonstrate to court that there was an airstrip in Busia which covered 30 acres. But if you go to Kakamega, the maps don't show there was the Busia town ever had an airstrip. So that's how deep the mess is. But that was being, I think, once we deal with that, it will be the only unfortunate thing that we have got a county government which is very, very transactional. extremely transactional and not transformative in any way. And they have got a lot of vested interest in whatever they do. And I think today, if you ask them to account even for one project that I've done for the three budgets that are now implementing the third budget, you will not be able to be shown anything. But that problem is not unique to Busia. I went to Northeastern and it's even worse. All these gorofas, you are claiming that Somalis are buying gorofas in town and whatever. Most of that money, I'm not saying all, most of that money is money devolved to these northeastern areas with the hardships that they have, and they have with the extra parks that go there. It all finds itself back to Nairobi, buying properties. So the mechanism of the devolved government is one that needs to be looked at keenly to make sure that accountability mechanisms are there, the necessary transparent issues are there, and the governance, there are mechanisms of dealing with the governance. Because even if you look at this thing called the impeachment is only allows MCAs. The ordinary people have got no way of dealing with the governor.
Senator,
if you are an aggrieved member of Busia, like my brothers here are, there's nothing they can do. They cannot go and under the laws that have been put there. They can only persuade their MCAs to maybe to try and impeach the governor. But if the MCAs are in the pocket of the governor, you get nowhere. And in fact, MCAs use the impeachment procedure to extort money from governors. There was a case of a governor who told me that one time MCAs wanted to go on a tour. And MCAs in Western is a governor in Western. And so they asked him for money. And he said they cannot approve this trip because it cannot be justified. So they went to Kisumu, caucused, and called the speaker and said, the speaker, can you draw up a motion to impeach the governor so that we can deal with we can negotiate and get our pack. Then the speaker said, I cannot see any grounds for impeaching the governor. So they turned around on the speaker and said, okay, you don't want to impeach the governor? We shall impeach you, get the speaker who listens to us, then impeach the governor. So the governor and the speaker had to acquiesce to what they demanded, and the guys went to Dubai. So with this kind of mechanisms, we really need to look at the architecture, the design of the county government to see that it is accountable and it serves purpose. But that does not mean that devolution has failed. Devolution is the only way you could create a ceasefire in this country to stop domination and exploitation by those people who capture the state and then hide behind their tribes and claim that they're acting in the name of their tribes. At least 15% of the resources of the government automatically go to the ground, then they will assuage that pressure, and that one helps. So let us support the devolution, but let us engage with the policy and legal framework to ensure that we come up with something that can ensure that the devolution delivers for the local people and for the republic. Number two, the question of recycling leaders. Recycling leaders, have to go back to the question of the architecture of our elections, beginning with the political party. Right now, political parties are personality cults run by dominant individuals. If you took the requirements for forming a party in Britain, the United Kingdom, and the requirements for forming a party in Kenya, you won't believe it. The same MPs passed a law that totally blocks people, and it was validated by the High Court in the name of having a national character. So you're required to have 1,000 people in at least 24 counties. You're required to have functional offices in at least 24 counties. So you need 1,000 people. It means then you have to do some magic. You have to play around. You have to do whatever to run 24 offices. Even if you put each officer 10,000 shillings a month, say 3,000 paying for a shop, and then maybe another 7,000 having a security guard and a receptionist. So 10,000 times 24 is 240,000 shillings. How many ordinary Kenyans can afford that monthly? Nobody. Those people can have access to money, and mostly less money, who can form political parties. when I was constrained to form the National Reconstruction Alliance Party, I had to do trickster deals. I had to go to the student body. I got students to be members. I got students to be officials. I got students to register their homes as party officers. Otherwise, you can't. So that architecture whereby only the rich can form political parties and therefore create personality cults is at the root of our problems. Then you come from there, you move to the voting itself. The way the parties then are owned by people, therefore you must be subservient to these owners. They are not institutions so that can just be that can midwife the democratic process. And so the leaders who get replaced and who get appointed, the only thing you need is loyalty to the owner of the party, and then you can get the ticket of the party. And then you can be elected to parliament. So the people don't have an opportunity to replace their leaders. So the architecture whereby legislators do not have a time limit then becomes abused to the extent that the owners of these parties can keep on recycling this and that and that. You have got people who have been nominated 3 times to parliament, the women and what have you. So yet the nomination was supposed to provide a platform for somebody to be exposed within that constituency so that they can be able to go out and maybe look for votes and stuff. So we really need to look at the question of the architecture, the policy framework, the legal framework for political parties. Then we might now end up with a situation whereby once we democratize political parties, by making it easy for very few people to form a political party and run, then a question of leaders staying on in perpetuity will not arise. So we'll be able to replace leaders based on their performance. The police ruling is clearly the judgment on the police that they cannot, it was a ruling that they cannot use various tools against unarmed demonstrators, epitomizes the problem we have with the rule of law in this country. There's no way you can enforce the law by breaking the law. And the Inspector General of Police, who has command responsibility over the police, should personally be held accountable for the violation of this law. So they need to have him in contempt, and I think from listening to the group, when I get back to the Senate, although we are still busy with addressing the motion on the state of the nation, after that I'll be constrained to move a motion to have the Inspector of the Police cited and declared incompetent to hold office for both for that violation of the law and also for the command responsibility for the killings and the violence we saw on the streets. The people cannot just go scot-free. We also need to have a judicial a commission of inquiry into those killings, into that violence that was visited on kids who are virtually walking. I hope you don't mind me calling you kids because you're the age of my kids, who are virtually walking on the streets with smartphones and making legitimate demands. They were in no way subverting the nation. Even the president who called them prisoners, he had no reason. And if you look at the fires, I was in parliament. I saw what happened. I saw the people coming. They were peaceful. And even the rushing of the parliamentary structures was a reaction to the snipers who are shooting. That's when I saw people surge forward. And why don't we have any pictures of anybody touching anything? Why didn't the demonstrators burn parliament, which was easier to burn than setting fire on the officers of the police? Who started the fires? Why don't we have pictures of people breaking the furniture in parliament? Why is furniture broken even in the upper floors of parliament, that's the areas that are damaged? Which demonstrator got there to damage those parts? Who damaged parliament? It was not the demonstrators. Who banned these things? It was not demonstrators. Nobody had I didn't see anybody with a bottle of cocktail. Neither has anybody pointed a bottle of cocktail. So we must get down and hold the police and the commanders up to the president who gave orders to shoot and kill, accountable for what happened. And these are crimes against humanity. Article 143 of the Constitution does not protect the president from prosecution for crimes against humanity, and I hope the Law Society will take it up and prosecute the president of Kenya for crimes against humanity. You don't cut down peaceful protesters with bullets. So people with command responsibility are known. The individual executors on the ground may not be known, but people with command responsibility are known. And by holding them accountable and by squeezing them, we can wring out the perpetrators who pulled the triggers. The kind of tear gas we are using now is not the tear gas we saw. I was personally arrested 28 times in demos and prosecuted, or I was acquitted in all. 28 times. There's no police station in Nairobi that I've never slept on the floor. And I've always slept on the floor and cleaned the toilets. And when I leave, the toilets are cleaner than when I went there. But never did I see tear gas that explodes. I've never seen that. What kind of weapons are these? Where did they come from? Do we have legislation approving or setting out the kind of weapons that can be used on the public? We have no registration on that water cannon, so that water is colored. What chemicals are there? Are they carcinogenic? And given the pressure with which they hit somebody, do they poison that person? So there's a lot to be done in legislation, and what has happened really opens our eyes. And me, when I get back to the Senate, I want to do quite a bit of legislation to achieve that. And because I'm talking legislation, allow me to answer the question on obstetric violence and what have you. It is true that our maternity wards are in a mess. Pregnancy in Kenya has become a disease. It's not a natural phenomenon anymore. Women are dying from deliveries. And there's this obsession with the cesarean sections because the doctors make a bit of more money than that. Women are being chopped up like some pieces of mutton or whatever. I don't know, like sliced up like bread. So there's a lot that needs to be done in the area of maternal health care, maternal and childhood health care. And I'm happy that there's a bill in Senate by Senator Ogola, nominated senator from Beatrice Ogola from Homa Bay. She has brought a very, very good bill, which has gone through the second reading. And now it is waiting for the third reading where you can make some amendments and stuff. And I would request that petition be brought to the Senate, can even be brought to me, and maybe the fellows behind this petition come up and look at this bill and introduce whatever amendments they would like to see in that bill so that they cater for the issues we are discussing. This bill is even addressing the questions of infertility and all those kind of things. So it's a very good bill, but can be improved on, and the stage for improving on is now. I would like to tell people a bit something I've discovered when I go to the legislature. Article 109 of the Constitution, Clause 1, states very clearly that Parliament, I'm paraphrasing it, that Parliament exercises its legislative authority through bills introduced in Parliament, approved by Parliament, and assented to by the President. Nothing else. Parliament doesn't have any other tool. So when you bring a petition, when you bring a statement, when you bring a motion and all these things, there are no mechanisms of enforcing the resolutions of Parliament. At the very best, maybe there are just opportunities for parliamentarians to earn some sitting allowances, because we earn allowances when we sit on these things. But I don't see where they go, even where Parliament comes up with a very good resolution in a motion, where it comes out with a very good resolution in a petition, where it comes up with a very good resolution in a statement. They end up there. They go nowhere. There are no mechanisms for enforcing these resolutions. So I only see that the only thing that eventually that has teeth in Parliament is legislation. And even the Constitution states that legislative authority is exercised through bills. approved by Parliament, and assented to by the President. So bring that petition and let us subsume it into the bill that's on the floor of the Senate. There's room to amend it after what is going on. That then the issues you come can be carried forward and be made law. And once they are made law, then you can go to court and enforce them. You cannot go to court to enforce a resolution, a statement, a motion from Parliament. So let us know these things for what they are. At the very best, they help give parliamentarians information on what is happening. Like we had a petition on Drumville from Mukambani, Drumville Sacco, which was brought by Senator Kavindu. And that one has informed us to amend the Cooperative Societies Act, because we realized that there was thuggery in the cooperative movement, whereby they just had the ministry mandarins taking over these societies, dissolving them, stealing their properties and whatever. So we are now working out on something to put this thing in a proper perspective. So let us focus on legislation. Let us focus on the bills that come into Parliament, the way you focus on the finance bill. That is the only way Parliament acts and has force of law. But with petitions and others, at the very best, can inform the legislature of what things people are going through. But the findings and the resolutions and the petitions of themselves go nowhere. So that petition, please, bring it to the Senate. You can send it to me. You can send it to the clerk. In fact, the petition moves faster when the petitioner directly moves it to the clerk than when the petitioner moves it through a member. So go and file your petition with the clerk of the Senate, and also come. Let us sit down with the Senator Ogola and others in the health committee and get your ideas, and let the data you have, let it inform that process of the maternal health and early childhood budget bill that's on the floor of Parliament. Then we get a law that gives you and answers the issues you are raising in your petition. So
Senator, nataka kukuuliza kitu. Can you hear me? Metro, one second.
Yeah, through the host.
Senator, can you hear me?
Through the host. Just 1 second. Through the host. This is Kenyan lady. Can I please piggyback on that question on maternal child health? Bwana Omtata, are you able to explain to the listeners why we do not have life-saving vaccines right now? I would like to just piggyback on the discussion on maternal child health. Thank you.
Okay,
yeah, the matter has come on the floor of the Senate, and I've claimed
Kenya lady,
that
can you go on mute,
the question
please?
of resource limitation, that they don't have the vaccines. That's what we were told when we called the various government officials, and that they came out with throw up things like procurement, things like allocation of resources, and stuff like that. But then it's just a question of having our priorities wrong. And it's not something that should be allowed to happen at all, because we are losing a whole generation, and the diseases that have already been wiped out in this country are going to re-emerge, because we are surrounded by countries where some of these diseases are prevalent. And when a child is not vaccinated within a certain period of time, then the opportunity is lost. So the resolution of Parliament was that the ministry moves with speed and acquires these products. Now, the problem we have with this country is one. Those who are old enough like me, and maybe slightly younger, would remember that we lived at a time when government stores were branded. If it's Panadol from the government, it had the initials GK. If it is syrup, the bottle would be clearly marked Government of Kenya, not for sale. If it was gloves, the packets would be that, and the individual gloves would be marked with the initials GK, GK, GK. Why did the government stop branding it is supplies? It is stores. And you'll find that these things are supplied. And if you go to county governments, you go where you'll find that there is data showing that these materials have been procured, they have been supplied from KEMSA, have done what, but they are not in hospitals. Where are they? They are in private pharmacies. So even these vaccines, I've no doubt that they could have come in and then have gone into the private hands, and so the government's mechanisms are not there. I'm sure if you want to vaccinate your child, you go to a private hospital, you'll get the vaccines there, but they are not in government
Absolutely.
hospitals.
Yes,
Why
Senate,
are
that
government
is the
stores no
problem.
longer branded? The
Senator,
vials, why are
unanisikia?
they not branded? So that you can know somebody's using a vial
Senge,
that is from the
mnanisikia?
government of Kenya.
Hannah interrupting him. He's talking.
Yes.
Continue, Senator. Sorry. The speaker was
Yeah. So
speaking.
we need to agitate that government stores must be branded. The school equipment scheme, you remember it? Why did it collapse? Why? What happened to it? Some of us never had to buy a book for the entire time we went to school, up to and including secondary school. To A level, we never bought a book. You could only buy a book if you wanted extra reading, like some of us used to do. But the books were always there. So this thing of saying that the market forces should take over this country is again a problem we have. We must restore the primacy of political action in the Kenyan space. The Kenyan state must not just be a tax collector. It must be an effective service provider. It must provide health. It must provide education. It must provide transport. And it must provide those essentials. So when the government just becomes tax collector, and where it wants to provide a service, it creates a mechanism for its owners and the leeches to then steal from the public, like the subsidized fertilizer. Look at subsidy programs all over the world in serious countries. Go to India, where there are heavy subsidies. India, the subsidies work because they give out vouchers. You don't have to begin importing fertilizer as the government of Kenya and storing it. You simply intervene on the market by having a database of farmers, knowing the needs of each farmer, and giving the farmer vouchers equivalent to their needs. Then the farmer goes to the ordinary store. If the fertilizer is 7,000, and you have subsidizing it to go for 2,000, you have a voucher of the remaining 5,000. You give the person a voucher of 5,000, you take your fertilizer, you pay the 2,000. The shopkeeper will go to the government and redeem his voucher. He's paid the 5,000. That way you avoid the government having to import things, having to store things, having to do all these funny things that we have. The things are there. You come here and we mess up everything. It's like if I came to your house and I want to answer the call of nature, and I'm from the village, I'm used to traveling a kilometer to go to the toilet, and you tell me, no, just go to that room, help yourself. Then I help myself, and I come back, I say, wow, this is a miracle. Today I've been able to answer the call of nature within a house. Then when I go home, I want also to build a house that is self-contained. Then I go home, yes, and I build a self-contained house, but I choose to locate the toilet in the living room. What am I doing? It will not be functional. I've gotten the design completely wrong. So one of the big problems, again, we have in this country is a design problem. We take noble ideas and fail them by designing the implementation in a wrong way. So they fail. We allow these interlopers. We allow these cartels and what have you. So on the question of vaccines, I think that's a question of that failure to brand government stores. Vaccines are bought and they disappear into private hands. The vaccines are available in the private sector. They are not available in the public sector. The private sector is a market sector making profit out of our misery and what have you. And very few of us can afford it. And so what happens? The majority of the people go without essential services. Article 26 on the right to life is meaningless if a child cannot be vaccinated at birth. It's a total violation of the rights of that child. The rights of children in the Constitution are also violated. So it's a very, very painful area. And I think maybe that you raise it, maybe within this act that's being made, we may need to make it a criminal offense for a child, for a facility that provides maternity services not to have these vaccines. So that's how they answer that. If I can go to the next question, I would look at
Yes,
the other question I could want to look at is the question of the right to recall, the Katiba Institute case. I was not a party to the case, but I followed it keenly. And again, we have got this problem of our judges trying to be managers and doing a bad job of it because they look at the law through the keyhole and not through, they don't go to the balcony and look at the law as a whole. So when a judge says that the elections are expensive, what does he have in mind? He has a paper election in mind. He doesn't have a digital election that may not even require mobilizing people to go to polling stations. He doesn't. He doesn't look at the fact that a recall can be done through platforms and the IBC needs to have a digital register. The biometrics they get should be biometrics that can be utilized effectively, not using the KIMS kit like a mouse to activate an idle computer for you to now begin doing what you want to do. The IBC should be able to give us a KIMS kit whereby voting is very easy and simple. You don't have to be spending billions of shillings on an election. So if that is done, if we can get the architecture in the election process correct, and we get a digital platform for doing elections, and which is anticipated under Chapter 7, a tamper-proof election that's accurate, simple, verifiable, and whatever. If our elections are simple, why should they be expensive? So when the judge writes that the elections are expensive, has he taken time, or she taken time, to look at the whole constitution and see that what is the architecture of what kind of electoral system that the constitution requires? So our judges go far and try to make pronouncements, try to be managers, and they do that in extreme ignorance of the law. And they end up coming up with decisions that are just laughable. Like I've mentioned that in the first Raila petition of a presidential petition, the Supreme Court pronounced itself that technology fails. Technology fails. Technology is based on the laws of physics. How does it fail? The fact is that technology can be compromised by three things. One, sabotage, incompetence, or ignorance. Technology does not fail. So when a Supreme Court of Kenya pronounces that technology fails, that's arrant nonsense. So we need to get back to the situation whereby judges, if they want to be managers, they should manage the thing in terms of the holistic understanding of the legal framework. Otherwise, let them stick to being judges and just make pronouncements that this is the law, these are the facts, and this is what happened, this is the decision. So, in the Katiba Institute thing, the judges cannot claim that their common sense as managers is enough to amend the constitution. It's not. The same thing with the issue of women. In the constitution, the word is gender principle. Article 27, clause 8. Article 81. There is nothing called gender rule in the constitution. The Supreme Court invented the word gender rule, and all of you know that there's a difference between a rule and a principle. And so they begin saying, all this commotion now comes up about the gender rule, the gender rule, the gender rule. Everybody talks about the gender rule. Nobody talks about the gender principle. What is the distinction between a principle and a rule? And what was the Supreme Court up to when it was pronouncing it that there was a gender rule in the Constitution? You go to the question of balloting. Instead of the judges pronouncing themselves, the Supreme Court judges pronouncing themselves that the elections are void because the election does not provide for spoiled ballots, they become managers. They begin saying, okay, we have spoiled ballots. Do they count or don't they count? Arrant nonsense. The election should have collapsed on the fact of the judges realizing that the election did not meet the threshold. The election had spoiled ballots because the election was manual. The architecture and the constitution is digital. You can't have a spoiled ballot when you vote digitally. Those are the issues. The judges are members of the Law Society. They need to do refresher courses for judges, especially on the technical areas of the Constitution. We are getting judgments that are horrible on the technical areas of the Constitution, so that our judges should not become managers, they remain judicial officers. If they want to manage, they want to try to pronounce management positions, then let them do that with the knowledge of the entire law. The next thing I want to have to speak to, the conflict of interest bill. It really was mutilated in the Senate. And the problem that has been in the Senate sometimes that we have got things just pushed through. There was a time, if I may give an example of what happened to the floor of the Senate once, we had the impeachment of the Siaya governor, where the government side, which was the passed a motion, it should be impeached. And it came to the floor of the House. And then some phone calls were made, and the government side was to shut down their own position. Something had changed. We had the IBC Amendment Act, which came from the National Assembly with a lot of issues. And the Senate arrested those issues, and people put their foot down, made proper amendments, captured a lot of the things that ended up with the demonstration that killed the people in parts of this country, saying no IBC, no reform, no IBC. We had put all those things, rejecting what had come from the National Assembly. Our chairman, I'm a member of the JLAC, the chairman went and read the document, our report on the floor of the House. No, we submitted the report on the floor to the Speaker. We had a special sitting. It was during December. We had a special sitting. The Senate was on recess. We were recalled for a special sitting to pass the IBC bill. When we got there, we noticed, some of us noticed things were not going according to plan, because on the order paper, in the morning session, they had put things that we had not been notified about, some which were not in the Gazette, which was also wrong. They said now the bill will be read, the paper will be tabled in the morning, but then it will be debated in the afternoon, the report of the committee. So we went prepared, ready to debate this motion and to justify why we felt that what had come from the National Assembly, they was not up to scratch, and we needed to deal with the question of how the IBC should be constituted. Having done case studies in the US, case studies in the UK, in most of the European countries, in Japan, in Australia, and whatever, to inform what kind of bill we need to be able to do a proper electoral body. Having looked at even our own history, IPPG, having looked at Brazil, having looked at South Africa, and especially the countries that have a presidential system like us. There are only four. I think it is the US, Nigeria, Kenya, South Korea, sometimes the Philippines. So we were able to our secretariat had done a very good job. We were properly informed, and we got a bipartisan position that we are going to vote in a certain way to force these changes so that what the National Assembly has done is revised. When the afternoon came and we sat, the quorum was confirmed, before you could speak, the Speaker called on our chairman to address the House. What the chairman is supposed to do at that stage is to move, is to read the report so that there can be a motion on whether we adopt it or reject it. But wonders, our chair simply stood up and said, we are withdrawing the report. First of all, you can't withdraw a report from the Senate. Once you table it, it's a property of the Senate. It cannot be voted, it cannot be rejected by a vote, or it's accepted by a vote. So it was withdrawn. Our attempts to protest were killed. The Speaker said the paper is withdrawn. The law is passed as it came from the Senate, and there with no amendments. So it went It was signed into law, and you saw the violence that came from the Azimio side, the demos and all that damage. And you wonder how a chair, now when you ask the chair, he confides in you that, well, he was called and prevailed upon to do that. He also believes it was wrong to do that. So these are the situations that you find yourself when a parliament has been captured and is totally transactional. These kinds of things happen. So the conflict of interest bill suffered a similar fate. But after what you guys did, when parliament was independent, people have sobered up. If you have been listening to the debate in the Senate, the leader of majority apologized for having done some of these machinations. So we want to do, going forward, we want to know which bills suffered this fate and how they can be recalled to the Senate. Or if they have become law, how they can be amended. So thank you for that. You liberated the Senate in that sense. Now, if you look at the debate in the Senate today, it's different from the debate in the Senate before before 25th June. And that's what happened. So the conflict of interest bill has got issues, I agree, but there's a general agreement that the bill has to be recalled and to be fixed. It was manipulated in the Senate. So the other thing, we have the question of the internet in Busia. Yes, somehow the Ugandan systems seem to be stronger than the Kenyan systems in whatever. And so, and that I used to have it in my village also. So one time, my village is fairly remote from anywhere else, called Kwangamoro village. It's totally remote from civilization. So we used to have a lot of interference and overlapping from the Ugandan networks. So one time I ran into Bob Colimo, and after when the TV station had been banned and what have you, I ran into Bob Colimo. He was quite a gentleman, so we chatted. So when he asked me for my number, I gave him my Airtel number. And he said, for heaven's sake, how can you give me the CEO of Safaricom? How do you give me an Airtel number? You don't have a Safaricom number. I told him, yes, I have a Safaricom number, but I can't use it when I'm at home because it's overridden by the Ugandan systems, hardly audible, and sometimes by whatever. So he asked me, where is your village? So I told him my village, where it was. And within 2-3 weeks, people on the ground surveying, and they erected a mast for Safaricom. And our networks improved, and that was not enough. When Celtel saw that, they also came in my village and they erected another mast of Airtel. So my village has got 2 powerful masts. Been able to use there's a Wi-Fi when I'm in the middle of my village because of those masts being there. But it's in the middle of nowhere in Busia. So the problem of Busia is marginalization. Even if you look at the power that we have in Western Province, I think it's 11 kV or something like that. So we are heavily marginalized as a region. Those who are old enough to remember that at one time Idi Amin claimed the boundary of Kenya was in Naivasha. That's when Jomo Kenyatta sort of began looking over this side of the country. Even TV stations, when we began, we used to receive the TV from Uganda. Even my father's telephone, the post office box number, when we were growing up, was in Tororo, Uganda, box 8, Tororo. And we used to go on bicycles every Saturday to go and pick letters, check if there were letters in my father's mailing box 8, Tororo in Uganda. So you'll find that there's marginalization, and the Kenyan state in Busia is very, very thin. If you go to the waters of Lake Victoria, the Kenyan state is hardly visible, with Ugandan fellows coming and terrorizing our fishermen, fisher folk, and what have you. So the absence of the Kenyan state in the border areas is a thing for concern. Even the boundary of Kenya was varied somewhere in Busia by Idi Amin when there was a complaint and he built a road and the boundary shifted by about 20 meters or something into Kenya. It is now there. It's become a de facto boundary. So these things are there. The Kenyan state is largely absent. But the irony of it is that I think Busia, Nairobi, and Mombasa are the only counties that have the entire establishment of the Kenyan government. All ministries are there. If you go to Minyeri, you might not get some ministries. But come to Busia, all the ministries in Nairobi are in Busia, all the ministries that are... So you wonder why Busia, strategic as it is, important as it is so marginalized, but has a lot of money. Go to any bank in the morning in Busia and see the bundles of money being banked. You don't know where this money comes from. But when you look at the economy of the area, it's totally deprived, totally desolate. So there are issues that need to be done, some at the national level, some at the county level. But at the county level, we are beginning to deal with these issues. And we hope that along the line, the governor will stop fighting me and we cooperate and see how we can help each other to achieve this. We have got Samia and Bunyala. These are hardship areas. I had never gone there, but when I go to a place, those who know, the place like Namuduru in Samia, when I got there the first time when I was campaigning for the first time, I was shocked by the kind of water the people were drinking on the shores of Lake Victoria. They were drinking surface runoff. The kind of waters my cows in the other part of Busia cannot drink. But these are people drinking it. So I've also had to pursue that thing. And right now, if you check the map of arid and semi-arid areas, you will find counties in Busia, sub-counties in Busia, that's Funyula and Bunyala, are now clearly marked as arid and semi-arid. I'm now pushing for the same benefits that go to Northeastern for semi-arid and arid areas to come to these areas of Busia. Take the question of flooding in Bunyala. It has become a shop for some people. Yet the permanent solutions can be found. The lake is overflowing. There's a bit of backflow right now. We know that the Ugandans constructed the Bujagali Fall, a power station on Bujagali Falls. We need to know whether this is the same thing that happened in the early 60s, after the Owen Falls were set up. The lake suffered a similar backflow until diversions were created to allow water to flow into Egypt. I don't know whether the Bujagali Falls is responsible for what is happening today. A lot of people have been displaced by the lake. And many people don't know that Busia has got a big chunk of Lake Victoria. So Lake Victoria is overflowing and it's flowing backwards into the homes of people. So that could be an international problem that needs the intervention of the national government, with the Ugandan government, to find out with a scientific study, why is the lake flowing back? Why is the lake not flowing into Egypt? Is the Bujagali Falls the reason, just like the Owen Falls were some time back? So the issues of Busia should be understood in that case. And I think some of them I'm able to tackle and I'm trying to tackle. Others I'm escalating to the national government and they should be tackled at that level. Although sometimes the problem is you go to these offices and they tell you now you need to support the president. But the opposition is one way of supporting the president when he goes wrong and you oppose his wrong actions, you are supporting him. Those of you who watched the video of when I spoke to the president in Busia last year, telling him follow the law or we will fight you or things like those. If the president followed the law, the Gen Zs would not have gone to the street. You would have done what you should always do. This country would be doing very well. But the disregard for the law is what is bringing us here. There was another question on corruption in Busia. Yes, I agree there's been a heavy corruption in Busia and it just...
Corruption in Busia is interfering with you, Senator. Afro, how do you want to take this further? Maybe we can give Senator.
I think what we do, corruption is
Hello, Senator. You can hear me?
endemic in India, just like it is in other parts of the country. And the question of law enforcement, the Office of the Auditor General is compromised. They just published poetry about Busia. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is compromised. They take no action. I've sent them intelligence on theft or pending theft, where people have come to me with the insider information. And because of what the courts ruled when I was fighting the SDR, that I got documents illegally, you can't use them. I've got a lot of court documents that I have that I acquired illegally from whistleblowers and whatever, but because they're up to the Supreme Court, they said I can't use them to any value. I'm helpless. That's why I've written to that's why I've gone to court to try and force the court itself then to order that the governor hands over the officially hands over these documents to me. But as we speak right now, the forensic audit I've done on Busia, we cannot account for 2.3 billion shillings in a budget year. The budget of Busia is only about 8 billion shillings. When you take away the salaries and whatever recurrent expenditure, then 2.8 from development cannot be accounted for. What are you dealing with? 2.3 cannot be accounted for. What are you dealing with? But that I cannot use it in court. I cannot use it anywhere because the court say you must acquire this document through the front door. That a whistleblower cannot whistleblow to a citizen. A whistleblower cannot whistleblow to the same authorities that are doing the mistakes. Those are the courts. That's what they have done. So they have totally contained the constitution into the old order. So I've got a lot of documentation on corruption in Busia. Even so, last time there was a break-in in my office, but I'm also.com in a way. Most of these things are on the cloud. So whatever was taken did not compromise the information I have. So, but I cannot use that information in any effective way until I go to the courts and say, give me this information. When you write to the governor, when I wrote the governor saying, give me ABCD, tell me the amount of money you found on the accounts of the county government when you took over, and how did you account for it? Give me this document. How come this vehicle, which was rejected by your former, which was supplied by people close to yourself, which when brand new at Isuzu, Kenya, goes only for 5.6 million shillings, and you have paid 13 million shillings for it, ex-Japan. How? All those things you don't get. When I went to court, I was even stoned when I was leaving court. Goons were hired to hammer me. Goons were sent to try and eliminate me in my home. Fortunately, I had left. So when you end up in a very toxic environment like that, then you begin asking yourself very, very difficult questions because you have what you can use to deal with the public. The courts have said you cannot use it. And like the SGR things that I was condemned for having gotten illegally, I still wonder whether I got them illegally. Because these things were brought to Parliament. There was a time when there was a heavy debate in 2011, I think, between Parliament and the executive over how the SGR had been conceptualized and effected. So when these people were summoned, they came with the documentation. It was a public hearing, which I attended. But I had the presence of mind when people went for lunch. I gave the clerks, I asked the clerks if they could photocopy for me. They said if they got paper, they could photocopy the documents. So I went, I got paper, I bought paper, I brought the clerks, they ran them for me. I got my copies, I took to the office, I came back. So when you say that I acquired the documents illegally, and this was a public forum where people attended, and the MPs who represent the people were looking at these documents, how did those documents become illegal? After the deals were made, that's when now people, when they came from lunch, I think some sweetheart deals have been made. The documents were mopped up and taken away. And when you tell the court, this is how I acquired these documents, they say you stole them. documents tabled and are confidential. I don't know now. Then what's the purpose of public participation if what is tabled there cannot be released to the public? If it's confidential, the committee should go in camera and listen to people in camera. But if it is done in the public, with the presence of the public, how does it become confidential? And then you realize the last time the Supreme Court made a ruling, just before they banned Ahmed Nasir from appearing there, senior counsel, they made a ruling in which they dedicated a whole paragraph, 49, discussing me, saying that I'm embarrassing the court. And I'm going to take drastic action if I don't stop. I was a party to the litigation. That issue was not before the court. The court never told which video it is they had seen on social media of me condemning the court. The only thing the court that I mentioned on social media is when the Justice Lanaola attacked him that he had seen Cyprian Nyakundi claiming that I had said I don't know ABCD. But I've never known what to say. So for me, these things that we have, what is happening in this country, the corruption in Busia is endemic, it's systemic, but it's also reflective of the corruption we have across the country, including dishonesty in the judiciary. The last time,
Senator, please allow me to interject a little on one suggestion with regard to that question of evidence illegally obtained. Do you think it's time to move an amendment to the Evidence Act, to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Act, so that we make exceptions for evidence? Because how else will you acquire evidence of corruption? It's not like these guys will come and give you evidence of them being corrupt. Is it time to amend maybe the statutes that are there, which protect that issue of using evidence that is, acquired in a questionable, quote unquote, questionable manner? And then when I have the mic, because I won't have the opportunity, a friend of mine has asked me to ask you, with that issue of recalling MPs, isn't it better to test that constitutional provision, even using that judgment of Katiba as it is right now? Because already I am aware some constituencies have begun the process before we begin looking at the issues of where the judges overreached and became managers rather than stating the law as it is. Sorry for interjecting. That's all.
Well, I think it can be done because I
if
think
you can add this,
the timeline they gave us almost for practical purposes, it's there. But I think the LSSK needs to simply still appeal that thing so that that restriction is not imposed. But for the current parliament, that restriction I think does not apply, except for when we go towards the close and the fact that you can only attempt once and not twice or thrice. So that's what I think I would put in terms of that. What was the other question?
On the legally obtained evidence, is it time to move an amendment to the Evidence Act and to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Act so that even if it's an exception only on matters corruption, we have an exception that you can use this evidence regardless of how it was acquired? Because corrupt people will not come and give you evidence of them being corrupt.
Yeah, that's I think what needs to be done. And so that also the Whistleblower Act should also be amended to show whom the whistleblower can be. Because take a case whereby somebody is working in a government institution, he has access to very, very sensitive information that is of corrupt nature, not necessarily the strategic interest of the country, of corrupt nature, and he goes to Boniface Mwangi and gives Boniface Mwangi that information because he has got confidence in Boniface Mwangi. He's not trusting the police, or he believes that even if he gave to the police, it may not go anywhere. The police themselves are in handcuffs from those who control executive power. So, could it be legitimate for a whistleblower to give Boniface Mwangi a document? So, and I think also the Evidence Act needs to be amended to allow for a ring-fence provision whereby citizens can inform other citizens on corruption, and the document then is tested on its validity, on its own veracity. Because these are documents saying ABCD has happened, it should be able to be adjudicated. We do not have a, just like the Article 40 Clause 6 says, that you don't have a right to stolen property. People should not use this to have a right to stolen property by making it impossible to have evidence produced adduced against them. So the Evidence Act may be need to be looked at. And that's why I was saying that maybe people who are more better endowed than myself, people who have gone to law school, people who have studied these things, need to look at the laws of Kenya and align them to the Constitution of Kenya. And also, we need also to demarcate constitutional proceedings away from the ordinary civil proceedings and criminal proceedings. The failure to separate constitutional proceedings from ordinary civil proceedings is the other problem we are having. That largely, constitutional proceedings are handled under the civil procedures, which are limited to an extent that are protecting individuals. Constitutional proceedings are public law. The government has no rights. Rights belong to people. The government has only the mandate, is a duty bearer where rights are involved. So that provision can be ring-fenced, that in constitutional proceedings, how evidence is acquired is not important. What's important is what does the evidence bring to the case? How does it help the court determine this dispute? And if we did that we had a clear procedure for constitutional proceedings, I know we have got what they call the Mutunga rules, which guide some of the proceedings under Article 22, but you also have the provisions of the Constitution which lie outside the Bill of Rights. What governs them when you have Mutunga rules? So there's a need to look at the laws of this country and maybe now have three procedures. We have got a procedure in criminal law, procedures in civic matters, and procedures in constitutional disputes. Then that way maybe we shall help ourselves. So the other thing I'll go to when I'm answering will be what is left. I've done with the question of tribalism. I've dealt with the issues of infrastructure in Busia. I've dealt with the question of recycling leaders generally. I've dealt with the police ruling on the use of certain gadgets during riots and the disobedience of those orders and how the fellows are supposed to be held accountable. I have also dealt with the question of the statistics. I've dealt with the right to recall in relation to the decision by the Katiba Institute. The last question is that, will I run for president if the people say I should run for president? My answer is why not? But not run for president because I want to be president, but run for president because the people think I'm the best driver of the vehicle they have invented. If there's a clear vehicle that wants to turn the direction of this country, and people think I'm the best driver to drive it, I will have a duty to do so. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. For now, nothing is ruled out, nothing is ruled in. Everything is possible, because I'll tell you, when you are at war, you don't leave the war to soldiers. War is never won by soldiers. War is won by the general population, which rises up behind the soldiers. So if there's a groundswell that we need to go in that direction, then the rules of engagement must be very clear, but it must be me leading a team where I'm not indispensable, not a personality cult. Otherwise, I'll be set up for failure. There must be clear structures within which I'll operate, within which my influence will be limited, within which I can say no to the temptations of power. I'm not superhuman. So there must be those clear terms of engagement, but most important, as part of a team, not as an individual, collecting all manner of characters to propel him over the pass line. So the issue is open. But first of all, there has to be evidence that the Gen Z have registered as voters. And that one is a minimum, an irreducible minimum. There has to be change to the way elections are done, that the presidential election will be declared at the constituency and not at Bomas. And then what remains just aggregation of what happened. We must have a digital election. If those things are in place, I comfortably run for the president of this country if the people of Kenya think I'm the best candidate within the particular moment to do so. But we must work and get ourselves to that point whereby we have tamper-proof elections that can be declared in real time without those who cook election having times to manipulate and interfere with the elections. That could be my answer.
Afro, I have another question to the senator. Can I proceed?
We wanted to get someone to ask a question. Let me ask.
Let me just ask, because it is the issue that kuna issue aliongelea and I really want to get it done. So can I proceed?
Okay, please ask one last question. We have many people.
Okay, just a minute. Okia Umtata, you talked about Busia airstrip. There is this area from Busia kuanzia Tanaka. From Tanaka, when you go all the way to Roadblock, that area is where we term it as the airstrip. But the area right now have people building on that land, yet it is government land. People have grabbed it. As the senator, what are you doing to ensure that we still have an airstrip in Busia? The other issue is if you go to Busia Korinda area, there is this area in Korinda where the government had moved market just opposite Busia prisons. That market since then has never been functional because there are people who wanted to get rent from those people that were buying shops. I tried to purchase a shop there in 2022, but 2021, 2022, but I was not successful because I was told, bring money so that we can give you a shop. They were asking for 150,000 to give me a kiosk that place. I declined and bought a shop just close to Roadblock. The other last question is, Okio Mtata, right now we are having a revolution whereby the president was speaking about budgets and borrowing. Don't you think you legislators are earning a lot of money which should be cut at least to around 250,000 shillings per legislator so that we can create more jobs and create more income for the country? Because we have to live by our means. We should not go out borrowing. What is your take on that, on the salaries of MPs being cut? Thank you.
Sawa. Thanks, Six. I think, Senator, there was a lady who had been trying to put a question through. Hannah, are you ready to give your whatever? And I can see Mariam also has her hand up.
Yes, thank you, Afrocentric and Chege. I think you couldn't hear me, so I had to drop out and come back. Thank you, Afro. Senator, thank you for a very informative and lengthy description and discussion on matters that you were asked. But in regards to the last question, if I may start there, but I wanted to talk about something else. There is no safeguarding the evidence. I don't think would do anything much if we are not giving any incentives to the whistleblowers. That's number one. Number two, whistleblower protection. If the whistleblowers are not protected, then you would not have many people who have any reason to come forward with this. So I don't know why that up to now there is actually in the law, there is no provisions for the whistleblower. There is no protection for those whistleblowers. Because if there was, believe you me, we would have more whistleblowers and maybe things would not get as ugly as they have. Now, that said and done, there was the petition that you said send it to you or bring it to you. That petition has already been brought to the House. And I'm sorry, Kenyans, but I don't know. Why do we have proportion representation if those women rep are not actually working on matters to do with women, matters that affect women? They're there and they're supposed to be at the center of legislations making that affect directly or indirectly affecting women. So for me, I think that also is a failure. I don't know how other women in Kenya feel, but I think it's a man's world out there. Yes, the government have tried. They've put they've said women representation, a proportion representation. They've allocated some seats for us. This was actually Western propagated, but is it still delivering for women? I do not think so. If this bill is there with the woman Senate and it's still not being touched, there's a lot of decisions and there are a lot of policies surrounding women's rights that the government, people who are representing women are actually not on most of those caucuses. And if they're there, they're actually overpowered by the men in those caucuses. So I don't know how our representation in this houses where the legislations are made is helping us, because you would see some caucus are more men than women, and these are decisions that are being made that affect women directly or indirectly more than the men, and women are not there despite the allocation of seats for women. So back to you, Senator. Thank you very much.
Mariam?
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot. Good morning, Afrocentric. Now, I had two questions. One of them was when it comes to the county budgets, kindly, Senator, how much of it is allocated to salaries? That is, I would want to know how much of it is allocated to the wages and operational issues. And then the second question I had was around procurement. You know, when we're talking about corruption, we talk about it very vaguely, but we don't pinpoint where the money is lost when we say corruption. I think most of the money is usually lost in procurement. So do they use County Procurement Act or do they use a National Procurement Act? And I really hope he could answer me directly so that I can give a follow-up question. And the next thing I wanted to ask him is how can he streamline the...
Procurement is done by the national legislation. There's no county legislation for procurement.
Or the act itself?
Yeah.
So is it possible for us to have it on a county level? Because, for example, when I'm looking at your portal right now, I'm not able to access your tender documents because they're restricted. And we know that the counties lose a lot of money in, of course, wages and in the procurement. And how they lose it in the procurement is in the inflated bills because of the kickbacks and all that. And we know why people do kickbacks. So is it possible to streamline the Procurement Act on the county level? And number two, is it possible to have your budget uploaded on a portal that is open to everyone, and then all the tenders that are won to be put on the portal? Actually, the three top tenders, so that they can be open to public scrutiny, so that if there's anything that has been inflated, people can actually challenge it and they can be withdrawn from that tender process. Is it possible to do that? I think that's really one way of streamlining the corruption issue on a county level. So my first question to you was, what percentage of your budget goes to the wage? Can you answer me now, please, so that I can ask a follow-up question?
And the wage bill should not be more than 35% of the entire budget. And development expenditure.
I'm sorry. No, I've asked you a very specific question because I know that only 11 counties are able to adhere to the 35%. threshold that has been recommended, and your county is not among them. So what percentage of your
just wait for him to finish.
No, he already said it was supposed to be, Chege. He said it was supposed to be, but I've asked him how much is it. He said it's supposed to be 35%.
Yeah, no, I think I've gotten her question. My account is not among them. I think my account is in the 40s, about 48%, but you don't have the latest audit because the audits that you have sent from the control of budget is a 2021 audit. That's the one I've been able to scrutinize. I'm currently scrutinizing the budgets from 2022, the 2022, 2023, 2023, 2024 budgets, because even the reports from the county, from the Auditor General, are not so clear. So I've had to retain the services of a private firm, which I've paid 2 million shillings from my various allowances to be able to do a forensic audit on those books of what you have been able to get, including what you have been able to get illegally under the table from the treasury and from wherever. Even from the county, some officials have given us some documents. So we're subjecting them to a public audit. And that's why I was telling you that in that public audit, we are having a problem with about 2.3 billion where it had gone. And right now, we have not reached to audit the current state of affairs in the county assembly because when the employment, the county board is also opaque. You don't know who is employed, you don't know who is not employed. It's very difficult to know what has happened there. So among the documents we require to be given to us are also documents from the county, the board, the county public board. And so I think it's a question I might not be able to pinpoint, but the fact is that the Busia County is over-established. But also there's another problem that the counties are facing, that where people are looking at counties as employment bureaus. And I'll play the advocate devil and say that most governors are terribly under fire for employment. And these are politicians who go and look for votes and make all these funny promissory things. And I think that was a mistake because when you remember, what could cure that? Could be to centralize some of these employment opportunities so that they are done by the Public Service Commission. I don't know. Could be a wrong proposal, but there's a problem in employment across the country. And given the failure to have industries to industrialize this country, then government remains as the single largest source of jobs. So everybody's looking at the jobs. Counties are not proactive in creating an environment for investors to come and invest and create jobs. There are very, very many opportunities, even in Busia, for this kind of things. But you'll find that they are not tapped. And so what remains is that the county governments have to employ. Another thing with the percentages, if I look at in real terms, I think Busia in real terms is performing under 35% of the revenue because a lot of revenue is being lost. On-source revenue is being lost. There's no way that Busia County Council, before the constitution came in, was aggregating something up to 800 million shillings annually in collections. The county government came in, the figure continued diminishing. We are now doing about 100 million a year, 100 to 200 million a year. If you compare to the Kenya Revenue Authority, which was almost at par with the county council, is doing about 1.5 B in terms of revenues. So it's not acceptable that the money raised from the ground is being stolen on the revenue side, not necessarily on the expenditure side. So we lose the fight against the so-called theft of public resources, which we miss when we only look at the expenditure side of things. On the revenue side of things, a lot of money is stolen. Money is collected, it never gets to the county coffers. There's a very clear law that the county government should not have accounts in commercial banks. I think Busia has got more than 20 accounts in commercial banks and things like those. So And these are the accounts that are used to launder money. So to me, I think that in real terms of revenue, the revenue of Busia County, we are performing at around 20% in terms of employment. Because if you look at the figures of the county government, the county council, the local authorities, compared to the figures of the devolved county governments, it is not acceptable that the county government should be collecting less than those local authorities, which had less business, the tickets were cheaper, the opportunities were less. If you look at even the growth of the towns, it should be collecting over 1 billion shillings. Busia County should be collecting over 1 billion shillings. Even the estimations from the government, the control of budget and the others, show that the Busia should be collecting over 1 billion shillings. And I believe they collect over 1 billion shillings. But this money never gets to the coffers of the county. So that's where we are. On the issue of the airstrip plant, as I told you that the maps in Kakamega, I think they're totally doctored. I don't know, I'm not a land surveyor or whatever. I don't know why the maps are different. I had to go to the survey of Kenya to get the maps that could show that Busia had an airstrip. There are very many things, even things of design. Somebody decided to come and put a prison in Corinda, right inside town. Why do you have a prison in town? It is sitting on about 50 acres of land. Why should a prison sit on 50 acres of land inside town? And this is a town that is a border town that cannot grow towards Uganda. It can only grow backwards into Kenya. So why should you have a prison chewing up 50 acres of land in the CBD? The prison needs to also be relocated to somewhere else where it can be of use. And then the land be released to enterprise. So the case I have against the Busia airstrip, it covers, as I told you, I did a research beginning in 1952. The question was that Parliament had validated the ownership of the airstrip land by the grabbers and had even started a process of compensating them for the same land. If the Kenya government wanted to use the land as an airstrip, they should compensate these people. There's a report of Parliament, there's a committee of Parliament that sat and made that resolution. So to overcome that, and these things were brought to Parliament, to court, to show that this was it, I had to go back and look at the records outside government records. And I was able to reconstruct a very, very clear narrative that showed that Busia did not just have one airstrip in Busia town. It had an airstrip in Funyula. It had an airstrip at Amukura in Teso, which have all been grabbed. So out of that, I was able to get that when Alupe Hospital was made a regional center for diseases covering East and Central Africa as a center of excellence for diseases, there was need for that airstrip there. And the local people donated the land. They were not even paid for the land. It was not a compulsory acquired. They donated the land. They were only paid for cassava. What they were paying 1 cent per cassava stem. And that's how they ceded the land to the colonial government, and an airstrip was established, which was serving these people. When an aircraft crashed in 2013? 2013? No, 2003. When an aircraft crashed in 2003, I think it was 2003. That's when machinations came up and people began saying that the airstrip was not viable, what have you. And people grabbed that land, and they were then they condemned the land, facilitated the grabbers to take over, and then they moved on land which was available, which had been set aside for Busia Sugar Factory. 83, it was 843 acres of land. They looked at that land, they went and grabbed that land, then they condemned the airstrip, and they went to Kenya Airports Authority, to the Kenya Airports Authority, and struck a deal to have the land, the airport authority, buy the Nasewa land, the Busia Sugar Factory land, the 843 acres of land from them, so that they could relocate the airstrip from the Busia town to the new land they grabbed, and they are going to get 1.2 billion shillings in that transaction. So when I intervened and blocked that transaction, and I was able to recover the 843 acres of land and restored it, I even won the court case in the High Court, in the Court of Appeal. I went and processed the title deed, and I called the county commission and handed over the title deed for that land in the name of the PS Finance. I did not do it in the name of Busia County government because I knew the county government would still mess up with that land. They had no capacity to invest in 843 acres. So I registered in the name of the national government. I gave the title deed back to the national government. Then I went back and I began fighting to recover the airstrip land. And that's where the war is right now. And I've been able to establish the acreage of the airstrip from the maps I got from the survey of Kenya. And now all those title deeds are lined up for being quashed. Initially, the Attorney General did not support the case, but now the Attorney General has filed an affidavit in that case that is even beyond what I had filed, showing how that land is public land. With the treaties between the Kenya government, between the colonial government and the local chiefs and what have you around there. I didn't have that documentation. Because the documentation I had was from the ordinary narrative. So the AG has done an excellent job. I don't know if the changes in the office of the AG, I don't know. But I've filed an affidavit that has now basically where I sit. I can say that there's no way that land can remain in private hands because the record clearly shows it's public land and it's 30 acres of land. Now the question is, can that land still be used for an airstrip? And my position is that it may not be viable for an airstrip because around it, because it was neglected, private developers with legitimate lands have since put up buildings, story buildings. Also, it is right on the border. The aircraft has to overfly Ugandan airspace sometimes before it can get to the height it needs to fly. Also, it has to go to Ugandan airspace when it wants to land before it can land. So we may need to look for alternative land in Busia, and Busia has a lot of land where the airport can, and I think Busia needs an airport, not an airstrip, because it can cover eastern Uganda, it can cover Uganda, eastern Congo, and the Sudan. You can have an international airport there, which will bring in a lot of revenues from these countries. Instead of talking about an airstrip, you have an airport, and this land is available. But then if I succeed in my case, and I hope I'll succeed, and the land is recovered and restored to the county government, the 30 acres that the airstrip sits on should be converted to should be used to replan Busia town. Busia town has got no plan. It just grew like a mushroom. Should be used to replan Busia town so that you can know what is the industrial area, what is the shopping area, what is what and what. And then maybe the people within the Busia town be given models, the owners of land, and be told, well, you're given about 5 years to upgrade your buildings to this kind of structure, or you lose ownership. So all those things need to be done. It's not a walk in the park, but it's not impossible. It may just take a bit longer. I don't believe that anything that's against the law can be impossible to do. It may just take a bit longer. As long as the law allows it, nothing is impossible. But it may not be a walk in the park. So that's where we are. And I think the other thing is salaries of MPs. Salaries of MPs is something I've engaged with for quite some time. In 2008, the MPs the first thing the MPs, around that time, the MPs just hiked their salaries. And I went and looked at the Constitution. I think it was section 41 of the old Constitution. And when I read it, I did not find that it really allowed people to pay themselves. Then I went and looked at the act. There was an act called the National Assembly Remuneration Act of 1978, which was moved by the late President Mwai Kibaki when he was a minister. He then moved the motion, and that's the law that allowed MPs from 1978 to begin paying themselves or setting their salaries and packs. So, Nation, I wrote an article in the Nation, And then Nation TV. No, it was a Nation. Yeah, it was Nation TV. Yeah, NTV hosted me with the then MP Mudama on the issue. And as well as also I was discussing, I said that I had come, I looked at the law and I had seen this, and I'm preparing a petition to Parliament to repeal the National Assembly Remuneration Act of 1978, so that the MPs can, like everybody else, be paid by an independent body. Now, after the interview, I traveled to Busia by overnight bus. In the morning, I got a call from a number I did not know. The person introduced himself as Kibe Mungai, advocate. Kibe Mungai told me, I have watched you on TV and you have checked the laws you are referring to, and I'm surprised that this thing is there. Nobody has seen it. What I want to do is and then you have said you want to go to Parliament. He said, if you go to Parliament, you'll achieve nothing, because that's where the problem is. The Parliamentary Service Commission